You won't believe the carnage that resulted when I stuck a raw chicken foot onto the massive volcanic island terrarium that I created, which houses my enormous and aggressive colony of fire ants. Fire ants are hands down one of the most notoriously feared ants in the world, with a potent sting that feels like fire on the flesh, and a swarm capable of reducing a dead animal carcass to bones. Well, I wanted to see this in action. This week, for the very first time in their lives, I gave my pet fire ants, whom we on the channel named the Crimson Knights, their very first taste of animal flesh, a raw chicken foot, to feast on. But once the ants had their first taste of blood and meat, the events that ensued left my jaw on the floor, especially when I made a certain terrifying discovery within their nest after feeding them their chicken foot. What you're about to see in this video will blow your mind. Gather round and let's watch nature take its course as a fire ant colony of millions takes on a raw chicken foot, here on the AntsCanada Ant Channel. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon. Welcome to the AC family. Enjoy. AC family, welcome to Volcania, my grandiose fire ant terrarium. Oh, have I got a video for you this week as we watch our beloved fire ants feast upon a chicken foot. I love these types of feeding videos because it allows us to see how our ants actually fit into the food web, meaning doing what they do best in nature, which is to break down dead animals and insects. And I wanted to see if the fire ants would actually reduce a chicken foot to its bones, and see how long the entire process would take. Go ahead, guys. What is your hypothesis? Do you guys think our fire ants will be able to reduce a chicken foot to mere bones? And if so, how long do you think it will take the ants? Leave your guesses in the comments. And by the end of the video, go back to your comment and let us know if you were right. But guys, as mentioned, wait until you see what I spotted when I peeked into the fire ant nest after the feeding. I shouted, and I think you guys will too. All that coming up. Now before we go ahead and feed our fire ants their raw chicken foot, I have to show you guys something. If you're new, Volcania here is essentially a massive open concept mountain on which our fire ants live and forage. The smoke coming out from the top is simply a hydrating fog for the colony's humidity that turns on and off as needed. The fire ants, as you will see in a second, come pouring out of the top of the volcano every time I feed them, in trails that look like streams of lava, all the way to their food somewhere below. The ants themselves are essentially trapped on this island due to a barrier of talcum that lines the entire periphery of Volcania. The ants slip off it if they try to cross, and they certainly can't jump nor fly, so they're all trapped within Volcania. Or so I thought. But anyway, the whole time that our Crimson Knights have lived here, I have always placed food here into these receptacles, just to keep things clean and tidy, I guess. A food bowl, which they always pick clean, a Snapcat vial into which I pour some honey, and a sweet jelly cup, which I replace every few days when it's done. Right now, the ant trails are moving mostly up the mountain, back into the nest, because they've finished all their food. But some ants are leaving the nest with a single job: to find their next meal. You see, our Crimson Knights have grown into such a huge colony now that going just a few hours without food becomes a nutritional burden for them. They're now at the point where the colony must be bringing in a constant supply of food, or else members of the colony starve. Look at them sucking up every last drop of sweet remains they can get from their jelly cup. No worries, my beloved Crimson Knights. I have something truly special for you today. And this time, I was going to place it somewhere new. Here, at the spot. AC family, let's do this. Placing in the chicken foot. And here we go. And within just a few seconds, one of the scouts discovers our precious meat offering. What you guys are witnessing here is the colony's first interaction with meat. Up to now, these ants have only known insects for their protein source. I figured if this chicken foot works well at feeding our fire ant colony, I might start to feed chicken feet from now on, so I can save up on feeder insects. The scout releases pheromones throughout the area, which informs nearby ants of the awesome food it found. It also rushes back to the nest, leaving a pheromone trail on the way back home to specifically instruct ants where to find the chicken foot. This all kicks off the chain reaction, and how the ants deliver messages of food all the way back to their nest. See it as fire ant internet communication, if you will. I think these ants up here already have smelled the pheromone and are releasing the same pheromone to summon the swarm from above. Meanwhile, ants that were feeding from the food bowl have had a whiff of the pheromones and have begun to swarm from below. They immediately begin feeding on the toes. The feeding process of this chicken foot has begun. For some reason, this chicken foot came with claws removed, so I expect these to be good entrance points for the ants to get to the chicken's flesh within. And wait until you see what the ants do at these open claw tips. I wonder how the ants will change up their regular feeding trails coming from the nest, now that the food is situated at a different spot from their usual feeding area. So far, I don't see a swarm coming, but it's only been a minute. I knew it was coming soon. I marveled as the fire ants gathered around, and I was certain this new food they've never before tried, called meat, was blowing their minds right now. Have a look at how excited they are. The chicken foot was the new talk of the town. The fire ants' pheromonally delivered messages of new food was like a viral trending post, being reshared and circulating throughout the entire island. And guys, it looks like the ants back at the nest were finally arriving on site. Here comes the starting trail now. Like streams of hot lava, the fire ants follow the pheromone trails laid down by returning ants to find the chicken foot. Ants are now coming from below and above. The swarm has officially arrived, and I always marvel at the sight of our crimson knights at every feeding time. I would never dare disturb this trail with my finger, and neither would any animal with previous fire ant experience. These ants are aggressive and ready to fight to the death and sting anyone or anything coming between them and their meal. Blanketing their meal like this is a survival strategy because this chicken meat is precious, and they know there are a ton of other animals out there that would want this valuable chunk of meat, and this was Crimson Knight territory now. The ants begin feeding on site as well as returning to the nest to call for more backup. If you think this is a lot of ants, wait until you see the swarm at its peak form. This is just the beginning. Up close, something truly magnificent is happening. Some ants, like this submajor here, is holding the chicken in place. I guess it thinks it might move, or something else might take it, or it may slip. Smaller workers begin sucking up the juices from the skin, and this major arrives to look for a place to chomp down on. Those at the open end of the foot are filling up their social stomachs with the bloody juices which they bring back to the nest to feed to everyone else. Amazing watching the ants work. I find it cool that the ants just automatically know what to do, despite never having dealt with this type of food before. Ants to me are just an incredible product of evolution. Wouldn't you agree? Growing up, it always never made sense to me why so many people hated ants and wanted them killed. Because if you take a closer look at them, they're actually pretty mind-blowing. A force of nature to witness in action, especially like this, during feeding time. Watching the ants make their way down from the top of Volcania filled my heart with such joy. Joy that for the first time, our fire ants were feasting on a meal that was perfect for their life stage and colony size. Eventually, the initial swarm looked like this. Have a look. What a crazy sight, right? Now, one thing you might notice is the ants have begun to place pieces of moss and debris onto the chicken foot. This is the ants' way of sucking up stickiness. They do this when I offer them cut-up insects as well. It just basically helps the ants work around the meat, minimizing the dangers of them getting stuck in the juices. They also do this to bury their food, to hide it from thieves. But this chicken foot is so massive, I don't think burying is part of their strategy with this food. Speaking of thieves, watch what happens when the ants notice another animal is nearby. Let's gently blow on them. The ants immediately enter a frenzy, rushing all around trying to figure out where the enemy is. Stingers cocked. Again, I would never dare touch this chicken leg if I were some passing animal. That fire ant swarm blanket is a clear sign to stay away. And I think it makes sense that Mother Nature has made these ants a bright fiery red in color. The perfect warning to other animals to stop and think twice about disturbing. So watch the chicken leg now over a 12-hour period. 4 hours after feeding. 8 hours. 12 hours. At the 12-hour point, the chicken foot had been sucked dry of moisture. The ants looked as though they were feasting on chicken jerky now. And oh man, look at this! The ants have begun to tunnel in through the open missing claw hole. So it seems ants were already excavating from within the foot, like miners digging for gold. It was amazing watching the ants work, a lot of them with full social stomachs, ballooning gasters full of chicken juice. Even though each ant is small, with a swarm this big, I expect the ants are able to bring a significant quantity of this chicken back to the nest throughout this process. Amazing to see the ants carving into the meat, though hard and dry now, to get to the softer parts within. Check them out. It looks like after having fed their social stomach contents to ants back home, ants were returning to collect more. And then I caught sight of this. Look at this, guys. A submajor was working hard at slicing this dry chunk of meat free, using its larger jaws. Other ants are hanging around waiting for it to be dislodged, so they could bring it back to the nest for consumption. They've also managed to cut away a lot of the meat at the open end. And I can see exposed bone now. It does seem like in fire ants, the submajor's primary job is cutting. Those larger heads house some pretty epic jaw muscles, precisely for that task. I bet the submajors feel so fulfilled, feeling useful in times like this. I noticed a huge chunk had been successfully cut off here. Good work, submajors. So cool to see the different tasks involved by the different specialized ants. Feeding time is definitely one of the coolest parts about owning ant colonies, and watching our Crimson Knights feeding in Volcania was just as gratifying and incredible. I noticed little gnats trying oh so desperately to get in, to feed and lay its eggs. but there was no way it could safely do so with a fire ant swarm like this, covering the surface of the chicken leg. The flies would just need to wait until the colony was done. I see some exposed bone now. It looks like even the super majors, the biggest of the major workers, have arrived on site to speed up the cutting away process of the flesh. I resolved to come back and check up on the ants later. 5 hours later, the chicken foot meat looked much more dry, and at this point, much more bone was exposed now, and that oh so familiar smell of decaying animal flesh began to float in the air around the site. Check out these areas of exposed bone and joints. There is what looks like a dried tendon, slightly tougher than the meat, but the ants were still determined to cut it all up into pieces for bringing back to the nest. It was amazing to see how hardworking the ants were. This was truly what ants were made to do in nature, and it filled me with such joy watching the ants completely in their element as they continued to strip the edible flesh from the chicken foot, bones becoming more and more visible as time went on. Through the night, the ants continued to work at stripping the flesh from the chicken foot. With a constant flow of ants moving in, eating, then taking the collected meat back home in chunks or within their bodies, I expected the chicken foot to be close to finished soon, perhaps by morning. They'd done such an incredible job so far at processing the chicken foot. The next day, all that was left was this: bones, some dried up flesh, and several ants eating up what they could from the leftovers. I considered this chicken foot pretty much finished. The ants had succeeded at stripping the chicken foot down to its bones, and the entire process had taken just over 2 days, about 50 hours. So, did any of you guys guess right? I was truly amazed at our Crimson Knights and resolved to from now on start feeding them raw chicken feet and perhaps other parts instead of just insects, just so feeding would be easier. But guys, what I was dying to see was the inside of the nest. It had been several weeks since I had peeked inside, and after this huge blast of protein over the past couple of days, I was sure we'd find a ton of brood, fattened and sorted together in their underground chambers. Let's remove the cover to their volcano nest. Whoa! Look at all those amazing tunnels! As expected, the brood rooms were incredible. Stacks upon stacks of larvae, pupae, and eggs. The future generation of the Crimson Knights could be seen within their nest chambers. The Queen of the Crimson Knights had surely been busy. Have a look. It was great to know that the surplus of nutrients and protein from the chicken foot had, as expected, nourished these babies, and that our Crimson Knights were exploding now in population. The Queen of the Nest was surely laying a ton of eggs now, somewhere in this nest, as we speak, hidden away in the darkness. As I looked through the ants' tunnels and chambers, I felt so fulfilled seeing all the healthy-looking larvae, all tended to and cared for by the loving workers. And look, those larvae are massive, super major larvae. It all made my ant-loving heart so full. And guys, if you find your ant-loving heart as full as mine, and you enjoyed this video, I'd truly appreciate it if you guys could hit the like button, as it really helps a lot to let YouTube know that you enjoy these ant videos, and that they're worth sharing to new audiences. Also, please do hit that subscribe button to be part of our ever-growing AC family, an incredible community of almost 5 million subs now that just love ants, and be part of this ongoing journey of natural discovery with me as we continue to watch our Crimson Knights rise to glory on... Wait a sec. Oh no. Is that what I think it is? A queen elate? No way. And look! A male elate! My heart began to race as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Guys, these huge larvae weren't super major larvae. These were alate larvae. Oh no! The Queen of the Crimson Knights has begun to produce reproductives. Uh-oh. Hope you can subscribe to the channel as we upload every Saturday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video to help us keep making more. It's Ant Love, forever.